I'm Pastor Shelley Stephenson, and today I'm here with Noni Barstow, and we would like to share with you just a snippet of a new support group that we have started called Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. We believe that there are a lot of cases, for whatever reason, that grandparents have been given this responsibility, extreme responsibility of raising their grandchildren. We are going to talk about some of the different dynamics of that. We're going to talk about some of the stressors, the emotional stress, the physical stress, the financial stress, the spiritual stress. And the support group, we just have a lot of different elements. But I want you to hear from Noni today, because she is one who has lived through this scenario on both sides of the coin, as one who was raised by grandparents and also as a grandmother who has helped to raise a grandchild, knowing some of the things that she had to go through and how important it is to know that you're not alone. There are so many people that struggle in this area. They love their grandchildren, love their children, but it's a hard way to go on your own. So Noni, I'm going to defer to you, and I kind of just want you to share a little bit about, first of all, why is this group so important to you, and why are you so passionate about sharing this group with other grandparents raising grandchildren?
Okay. Well, for one, I was raised by my grandmother and my grandfather. She had temporary custody for a few years, and then when I was 5, she got full custody. Then 5 years later, my mom passed away. And I just remember how hard it was on the household to have the two generations with that gap in the middle living together. Because when she was a kid, things were so much different. And I think we have that same scenario today.
Right.
The cultures were different, but we still have that same dynamic going on today. And then as I grew up, of course, my grandmother passed away then when I was 16, and I ended up in the foster care system. Now, nobody wants to take on a 16-year-old kid that's got a lifetime of troubles. So it was very hard for them to find me foster homes. And I wasn't easy going with that situation. I made it hard on them because of just all the pain and all the betrayal that I felt. So I'll fast forward. I've been married twice. I have 2 beautiful young men for children. My oldest son found himself in some trouble and barely escaped going to prison. So for the next 6 months, he ended up going to rehab in lieu of prosecution. So for that 6 months, I had his child all by myself every other weekend for that 6 months. Then after he got out with no driver's license, it was hard for him to get a job. With a new felony, really made it hard for him to get a job. So he lived with me, and the child lived with me. We ended up going to court, and he got full custody as the custodial parent. And they lived with me for 3 years. So after 2 years of me not being able to get him to get a job, I asked him to leave. And I gave him choices. I said, you have 3 choices. You can go somewhere where you can take your daughter, where she's going to be safe and secure and cared for. You can leave her here, or you can take her back to her mother. I'm very glad that he decided to take the child back to the mother. Not that I still see her about every 3rd weekend. Right. I still make that trip an hour and a half one way.
Right.
So 3 hours on a Friday night and then 3 hours on a Sunday. Because she's so used to being with me that she gets to missing me terribly.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's not fair to the child.
Right.
But she is loved and she is taken very well care of, and she is where God has intended her to be.
Amen. Amen. So let's go back to the first part of, your life story. You see things now you didn't always, through the lens of your grandmother as well as yourself, right? So when you're younger, you only see things from your perspective. But now, looking back, you see a lot of things and know a lot of things you didn't know then about what your grandmother was going through. And one of the first things you said that kind of hit you as you got older and you drew back into a relationship with God, a personal relationship, was understanding your grandmother's pain and your grandmother's grief in the situation. Meaning, if a grandparent is raising a grandchild, it probably means that there's been a breakdown with their child who is the parent of their grandchild. So, there's bound to be some heartbreak and heartache there. So before your mom passed, there was a certain kind of pain. After your mom passed, there was a certain kind of pain.
Absolutely.
But it's hard for the child to see that. And part of grandparents raising grandchildren is that, we hope to raise awareness so that grandparents can understand where the grandchildren are coming from, and vice versa for these grandparents.
Yes. Because I think it's really hard on the grandparents. Now, I know from my grandma, she was very stuck in the era that she was raised in. And really, in that concept of things, it's not much different than today.
No.
The reasons these kids are being raised by their grandparents today is not much different than what it was then. My grandma had my mother had a substance abuse problem, and she had mental illness, and she self-medicated. This took her down a dark path, and my grandma had side seat. And she just had to watch
her child suffer,
what her daughter was going through. Now, my mother was her oldest child and a different father than her other two kids. So I had an aunt and an uncle that was only half siblings. So it was hard for my mom, being raised by a stepfather. And she was so much older that she was pretty much out of the house by the time the last one was born. So she just enjoyed the party life, and she didn't take no account for the actions that she did. So my grandmother was left to pick up the pieces and to make sure that me and my brother got raised. She was 52 when she was forced into retirement due to heart issues. She'd had a stroke and a heart attack within like 3 years. So she was relatively young to be having those kind of issues. And I contribute a lot of that to the stress of worrying about, where is my child?
Absolutely.
I'm here with her children. When is she going to get it together? And I don't really think my mother ever did.
Right. Well, I think about grandparents, and I think about, the emotions. I mean, it is emotional turmoil. Now, your mother was the way she was for a reason. We always say that about people. She went through certain things, and she lived from a place of hurt. Your grandmother lived from a place of hurt, and then eventually you lived from a place of hurt as you navigated life in a situation where, most children are bitter, hurt, angry because they feel like their parents have abandoned them. And the grandparents become the bad guys. Was that the same in your situation?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And my grandma didn't understand it. they didn't understand addiction and mental health issues like we do today, so she got mad. She was bitter.
Yes.
And it was, what was the most horrible was after my mom passed, I reminded her so much every time she looked at me. My brother did nothing wrong. He was the golden child. And I was always the one in the hot seat. I was always in trouble.
Right.
And so I didn't think she loved me. She definitely acted like she didn't like me. And I just want to use what I know, what I've seen, to help these grandparents going through this now not make the same mistakes my grandmother did. If anything, these children need to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the household they're in wants them, loves them, and is always going to have their best interest at heart.
Amen. And don't you also think that we can teach grandchildren, and it really doesn't matter where they start, at what age, to appreciate what is being done for them also. And that's what I love about this program, is we are trying to look at it from, it's a two-way street, and trying to understand. Yes, we're giving a special emphasis to the grandparents, because by the time you get to be a grandparent, you're ready for retirement, rest, relaxation, less stress, all of those things. And now you're taking care of your grandchildren. So, you're burning the candle at both ends. Financially, it can be a tremendous burden on top of the emotional stress and duress. And so, I think just opening up the conversation, and that's one of our biggest venues when we come together, is dialogue, right?
Absolutely.
We try to make sure that it's not a session where we're just griping about this person and that person and this organization and that. It's more about, I understand what you've been going through. I went through it. Here's what helped me.
Right.
And so when you have a room full of grandparents that are going through similar situations, most of them are at different places in their journey.
Right.
So there can be some advice given, some direction given. We can learn from one another. Right? You can share your experiences like you do. And there may be some that are just fresh, out of the oven, and they're like, man, I don't even know what hit me.
Right.
So dialogue is important. What else is important about what we are offering through grandparents raising grandchildren?
Well, I really want to make an emphasis on learn how your child feels. Be careful about what is spoken in front of that child. I can remember a lot of bad things being said about my mother, by my grandmother. She loved to bash her. And a lot of those things I overheard.
Sure.
And that was very hurtful, And these kids, they've already been hurt enough. They feel like they were discarded by their parents. They didn't love me enough to quit doing this, or this, so that they could keep me. So that must just mean that they don't love me.
Right.
So, it's just so important to instill that love and respect. And an 8-year-old, yes, they deserve respect, because they are a living, breathing, thinking, feeling human being. And, a lot of people think that kids ought to be seen and not heard. Well, a lot of times these kids need to be seen and they need to be heard. So at the end of the day, what I would like to see is these grandparents being comfortable enough to sit with their grandkids and have open, honest dialogue. So that the kids can tell them how they feel and they can tell the kids how they feel. That way everybody is on the same page. And I think that would help a lot.
Absolutely. So communication is a very important part. And how do you say that those of you that are leading this group, how do we come alongside the grandparents to help them communicate better, help them understand better, take some of the load off them. You know, what can we offer through this group to help with that?
Well, I think some grandparents may not even know what the issues are that plague these children. I mean, another generation gap is there. So things were different when they were going to school. You know, look at the bullying, you know, and just the oddities that the kids are dealing with. You know, the drugs are running rampant in the schools, and you know, drug abuse is a generational curse. That if it's not talked about openly and healthy, these kids could fall victim to that very easily, especially if that's the problem that their parents had. So I just think being honest, allowing your conversations to come from the heart, you know, I think that's just so very important.
Absolutely. And hopefully we can draw some of these things out. And you know, one of the things I'm most excited about is to be able to come along grandparents as far as their spirituality.
Absolutely.
Also. Because I don't know how people do it without faith. For those that don't have a strong faith, we would like to be able to help them strengthen that, come alongside them in that, and that's my part in this group. To, you know, I would be willing to speak one-on-one and just work with grandparents and grandchildren in any way that I can. This program, it's the gamut. I mean, we talk about, you know, physical struggles. We talk about mental and emotional, like I said, financial, legal trouble, but it's the spiritual piece that can help hopefully weave some things together to bring a peace, a sense of peace to the family unit. So there's so many pieces to it, but I just wanted to kind of start the conversation with you as one who has a lot of experience on both ends of it going forward. We meet on Monday nights at 6 p.m.
Yes.
And one of the things we can say, we know your time is so valuable, and it's so hard sometimes to find time for yourselves, grandparents. But it's 1 hour. We start at 6. We'll have you out of here by 7. We have a light snack. You're more than welcome to bring your grandchildren. We have a daycare, or, you know, we have kids from 3-4 years old up to early teens into the teen. It doesn't matter the age. We're prepared for that. And, you know, it's just going to be a time for you to be able to share, to be able to receive, to be strengthened, to be encouraged. So stop over to Christ Covenant on Ludlow, 400 Ludlow and Bell Fountain on a Monday night. You don't have to register. You don't have to do anything before you get here. Just walk in, have a seat. We know that you will feel comfortable. It is a very confidential environment that we have, that, you know, you can feel free to speak. It's a safe zone. It's a non-judgment zone. We're not about that. We are here to help you. If you have any questions, you can call 937-935-1352 and ask about grandparents raising grandchildren to get any additional information. We do have some books that are really good that we distribute, that we can kind of walk along together. It helps us stay on the same page. It helps us to stay focused. And there are things that can benefit all of us in the realm of growth and healing. So stop out on a Monday. Give it a try. You'll know if it fits you and where you are right away. We would be so happy to see you, and we would be even happier if we were able to help just release some of the burdens, some of the stress as you go forward. And so, anything in closing you'd like to say, Noah?
Well, I would just like to say, I encourage you grandparents to come out and check it out. And like Pastor said, we do have babysitter arrangements made. But I also like to say that education is important, and we understand that the education that the grandparents that you guys got might be a little bit different. So if there are lacks of being able to help with homework, have them children be a great time for them to get some help with their homework.
Right on, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do what we can and try to advance them in that. And if it's beyond our spectrum, because maybe some of this stuff there, we know people who would be willing to possibly mentor them,
Yes.
Or to help them through making those connections, because a big part of this is sharing our connections with
Absolutely.
each other, our resources with each other, to take that load
Yes.
off. So God bless you. We're going to continue throughout the next several weeks putting blips out on Facebook and in other venues to share about the program and some of the testimonies and the things that we'll be doing with some of our special events coming up. So thank you for your time. Until we meet again, once again, we are Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, a support group for grandparents and children who are experiencing this dynamic. We are here for you Monday nights at 6 p.m. at Christ Covenant, 400 Ludlow, Bellefontaine, Ohio. God bless you. Until next time.
God bless.